Today we're going to be going over the 5 things you should know before building a home in Palm Bay. According to U-Haul's study on one-way moves, the Palm Bay, Melbourne area was the fastest growing area in the entire country in 2023. And with the fact that Palm Bay is only 40% built and 60% undeveloped land, there are a ton of new construction opportunities. And all the time I'm watching people that make these mistakes because they really don't know these 5 things. So let's get right into it. The first thing you should know, and I'd argue probably the most important thing, is that there's a reason for the price. As you're looking at your new construction options here in Palm Bay, you're likely going to get a baseline off of Zillow or Realtor.com and notice that every house, let's say every single family house around 1,800 square feet, is going to be at around the same price. Right now, it's in the mid 300s, from 330 to 360, really, for an 1,800 square foot house. And it might be different by the time that you're watching this video, but either way, you're going to look on these websites and you're going to look online, maybe even go into some model homes, and you're going to see, okay, this is how much it costs for this much square footage on this size lot. And then you might see an outlier, right? You're scrolling through, everything is 350, 360, 370, and all of a sudden you see an option that's 310 or 315. It's super important to know that there is a reason for the price. Now, that reason can be any number of things. It might be the location. The further south and the further west you go in Palm Bay, the less there is to do out there, the less developed there is, so they don't have as much value out there, right? Or it might be the utilities. Everything else you're looking at is on city water. This one doesn't have city water connected to the street yet, and so this one's on well water. Might be the construction quality, right? All of the other builders, everybody has to build to code, and then the rest of them are building with granite and they're building with certain flooring, and this one is building with Formica and it's building with worse flooring, worse construction quality, cheaper subcontractors, whatever it might be. And maybe they listed it higher originally, and then when it didn't sell because the house looks and feels cheaper, they lowered the price. Whatever it might be, and it might be worth it to you to say, hey, I'm okay without the granite, I'm okay without the tile flooring. Just know that there is a reason for the price. The second thing you should know is that build times vary wildly. From builder to builder, and even within the same builder, house to house or neighborhood to neighborhood, there are totally different timelines. So what we'll see is there's usually one of 2 things happening. It's either a spec house, which means the builder made all the selections, the land, every single upgrade, every flooring choice, every tile choice, everything, and they are going to completely build that house and then sell it as a spec home. You don't have any options, it's still brand new. Most of the time, a closing time frame on that, I've seen as short with cash, I've seen as short as 2 weeks. Most of the time you're looking at 30 to 45 days, and with some builders as long as 4 to 5 months, rarely longer than that. And then on the other side of the coin is if you're doing brand new construction, start to finish, you buy the land, you hire a builder, you go through the permitting process, then they build the house, you do your inspections, you do everything. That process I've seen take as long as 18 months. Now, that was in a market where the permitting department was slower. They didn't have the infrastructure to deal with the fact that this much growth was happening in our area. And now it's down to about 12 to 14 months, although some builders are still at 18 and some of them are at 9. And so it's important to know as you're looking that build times vary wildly. So it's very important to start planning in advance. If you're moving a month from now, there's going to be less choices. If you're moving 2 years from now, you're going to have every choice in the world, and you can explore those long-term new construction options. And if you don't like any of them, you can say, okay, you know what, I'll just wait and build a spec because where I want to build, the neighborhood I want to build with, or the builder I want to build with only build specs. Great, they'll be building specs a year and a half from now, I'll buy one then. It's important to do the planning because build times vary wildly. This third point piggybacks off the last one, and it's that you have way more options than you think. Just like how there's different ways to build, there are plenty of different builders. And if you look online, you're only going to see the top 3 or 4 because they're national brands or they're regional companies that have figured out the search engine optimization, the SEO. And so if you type in new construction in Palm Bay, you're going to get the top 3 or 4 neighborhoods. If you type in a certain section in Palm Bay, Courtyards at Waterstone, St. John, anything, you're going to get the same few builders. And if you're looking remote, like if you've never been to Palm Bay, if you've never been to Florida in general, you wouldn't see that there's almost 20 companies that are building right now. Because there's locally owned companies, there's companies who build great houses and have no idea how to run a website. And so they don't pop up online, and they might have a better deal, or they might have a floor plan that works better for you. Whatever it might be, you have way more options than you think you do. I think that's important why you work with somebody local who doesn't work specifically for one builder, because we're not biased in any way of saying, oh yeah, you have to build with this one because this is the only way that we get paid. No, we can bring you all 20 options and say, hey, what works best for you? Or you give us a needs list and we say, okay, it's probably gonna be one of these 2, 3, or 4 builders. Fourth thing, and again, this is one of the most important ones, is to know that there's very little to do in Palm Bay. As I mentioned, Palm Bay is only 40% built, which means 60% of it is undeveloped land. Of what has already been built, not what's zoned, but what's actually there, 92% of it is residential. So that 8% accounts for every single restaurant, shopping center, movie theater, all of it combined. And so one of the reasons that Palm Bay is so affordable, and I understand that affordability is an issue for people. What I mean by affordable is compared to the rest of this area and compared to the national market, Palm Bay houses tend to sell for less than the national average and less than the average of the surrounding Space Coast. Why it is that way is because there's very little to do in Palm Bay. Now, here's the thing. I was born and raised in Melbourne, which is the city just north of Palm Bay. And I knew this when I moved to Palm Bay a few years ago, that I was trading off the fact that I would have to drive 15 minutes to do pretty much anything for the fact that I could save $50,000 on my house. And that trade-off was worth it to me, and it might not be to you. What I'd encourage you to do is I'm going to leave a link somewhere to the video I did on why Palm Bay is cheaper than Melbourne. Before you build in Palm Bay, I'd take a look at that video. There is less to do in Palm Bay than there is to do in Melbourne, in Orlando, an hour west of us, pretty much anywhere else in Florida. One of the things that's convenient about Palm Bay is that it's away from all of the hustle and bustle, and it's still close enough that you're driving distance to Disney, Universal. You can get to the beach within 30 minutes and Disney within an hour is kind of the frame of reference I give for Palm Bay. And so it might be a great spot for you, or it might not be. Just know that you're not going to be walking to the stores and you're not going to be walking to a restaurant. You're going to be driving places. Oftentimes when we go on date nights, we're driving up to Melbourne to go on date nights. And it's not good, bad, or anything. I would like you to know, if you've never been to this area, that really there's just not much to do in Palm Bay itself yet. Now, of course, there's plans to have Palm Bay grow, and in the future, I'm going to do a video on what plans there are for Palm Bay and what's going to be built. And then there's going to be a ton more to do, and that's great. The other thing I like about that is it makes Palm Bay a better long-term investment. Right now, you can get a house in Palm Bay for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 less than the exact same house in Melbourne, and you can get it for $200,000 less than that exact same house in Port St. Lucie, a couple hours south of us. As a long-term plan, as the area gets built up around it, I think Palm Bay is a fantastic investment. Just if you've never been here, know that there's not a lot to do in Palm Bay right now. Final thing you should know about building a home in Palm Bay is that using a real estate agent comes at no additional cost to you. If you walk into a builder's model home and you meet with a builder rep who works for that builder, that person only gets paid if you build with that builder. Now, with a real estate agent who's representing you, we can give you all of your different options, and whichever builder you build with, we can represent you, and they pay our commission at closing so that you don't have to. This can be helpful whether you've never been to Palm Bay and would like to know all of your options before booking a trip here, or it can be helpful if you've lived in Palm Bay your entire life and want to have a buffer between you and the builder, somebody who represents your best interests and not the best interests of the builder. If you've made it this far, I trust you've gotten some value out of the video. I'd love to be your realtor of choice when it comes time to build a house in Palm Bay. If you have any questions or you're planning a trip down here and would like to know some more of your options when it comes to building a home in Palm Bay, please reach out. If you'd like more content like this, I'd invite you to subscribe for weekly videos about real estate in Palm Bay, the surrounding Space Coast, home tours, and everything in between. Till next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day.